As the NFL offseason is underway, thick and fast, and it is now time for the NFL Scouting Combine. And we are live there. Let's send it out to our Tommy Tran in Indianapolis. Tommy.
Jeremy, thank you very much. Yes, we're inside the convention center here in Indianapolis, and I'm joined to my far right, Jamey Eisenberg, senior fantasy analyst, and to my immediate right, Ryan Wilson, draft analyst, here to break down and get ready for what should be an exciting week. Behind us are the podiums, which are empty now, but they won't be for long, as hundreds of the game's best prospects are here. Their measurables will be tested, gentlemen, and of course, all in an effort for some draft success. Ryan, I'll start with you. After a year off due to the global pandemic, pro days were essential for these players. They're now back here with the opportunity. What are your thoughts on having some guys not working out on some issues, but others going full go?
It's great to be back. I was just saying before we started, I haven't seen you guys in 2 years, so that's good, number one. Number two, it's good to get these players here because, number one, it allows them to be seen. And the big, like, we love the running, we love the sprinting, we love all that thing, the sort of shorts and T-shirts portion of the field day in the pre-draft process. But the most important thing are the medicals, to get a sense of whether these guys, how healthy they are. And here's an example. Evan Neal, Derek Stingley, Matt Corral, two of those guys have quote-unquote health issues. That's why they're not here. But also the interviews. You can see how these guys are one-on-one. The coaches can get a feel for these guys, the position coaches. You can put them on the board, as they like to say, and see what they know X's and O's wise. And that's actually more important than the bench press and the 40 time and the three-cone drill, although those things do add to what you have in terms of trying to figure out who these players are.
Jamey?
Well, I think, unless you're Les Snead, you want to be here, right? You want to see what these guys have to say. I think that's, like Ryan said, it's the most important thing, because what these guys are capable of doing. Game film matters so much more than what they're going to do here. Yes, they'll run fast. There'll be some guys that raise their stock. Obviously, the medicals are going to be hugely important, but it's what they do on the board. It's what they do in the interview process. It's what they do to set themselves apart. It's a job interview. We forget that. This is a job interview. So they've already put in the work. Now it's just kind of putting the cherry on top for these guys and establishing themselves where they're going to get taken.
All right, so we've set the table for what we're anticipating for this week. Let's focus on the quarterbacks, maybe not the strongest class, of course. Ryan, before I get to your thoughts on a guy who we project to be one of the best or at the top, Malik Willis, Jamey, your eyes on him. What are you looking out for from him this week?
Well, I think, you want to see him take what he did at the Senior Bowl instead of carry that over, to a strong combine, because he was the buzzworthy quarterback. He was the guy, I think, that you're looking at and saying, can he take that step forward? And the thing that I like about him, obviously, from a fantasy perspective, is he runs, over 1,800 rushing yards in his 2 seasons at Liberty. So I know Ryan will be happy to hear this if the Steelers are going to go all in on him. But, there are a lot of quarterback-needy teams, and he seems to be the guy that's sort of rising up the draft boards a lot. So fantasy-wise, he's going to be the prize. Hopefully he ends up in a place where he can be a starter right away. But obviously he's got the opportunity to take that step forward after a strong, Senior Bowl performance so far.
Yeah, I'm laughing because here's the talking point about Malik Willis. Please don't put him on the field in year one just because he's so raw. But I understand what you're saying from a fantasy standpoint. By the way, thank you for giving Malik Willis to the Steelers, because at various points, Tommy, I've seen tweets from Jamey where he wants Jimmy G in Pittsburgh. And no disrespect to Jimmy G, incredibly handsome, but I don't want him in Pittsburgh as a Steelers fan. Give me Malik Willis. But right, he is so incredibly athletic, but he's also so raw, and Jamey sort of talked to some of that. But here's the talking point that you're going to hear for the next 6 weeks about Malik Willis in terms of how I feel about him. Is he a first-round pick? No, he's not. He's probably more a second-round guy. But if you think there's 20%, 25% chance that he ends up being Josh Allen, you absolutely roll the dice on him. And this is my latest mock draft, came out Monday. I have him going 8th to the Falcons. Is that too high? Yeah, it is. But again, everyone was except Pete Briscoe, of course, was panning the Bills taking Josh Allen. That has worked out. Now, I'm not saying Malik Willis is going to be Josh Allen, but if there's a chance, 20, 25%, whatever, I feel like you roll the dice on that, because quarterbacks are overdrafted all the time, and you don't want to miss on this guy. You don't want to be the Bears who pass on Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes and end it with Mitch Trubisky.
And I think, to your point, Ryan, that's a perfect landing spot, because Matt Ryan could start for one more year.
Exactly.
And then, you give the reins over to Malik Willis in 2023, if in fact that's the route the Falcons go.
And guys, we're talking about a person who could be the next Davis Mills, some value perhaps with Carson Strong. It's never been about his ability to play. His availability has certainly been an issue. What's big with him this week, Ryan, that you're looking out for the Nevada quarterback?
It's funny you mentioned Davis Mills, because I was talking to a scout about Carson Strong at the Senior Bowl, and he said he's Davis Mills. He's probably a third-round guy. And the issue, of course, is the health that you talk about, Tommy. He had the knee issue going back to high school. school. He had a cleanup procedure prior to the season this year, and he started off slow. I was talking to a scout early in the season that said he's not even using his lower half when he's throwing the football. The second half of the season, he got much better. He's not going to be a mobile guy, but he is strong-armed. He has probably one of the best arms in this class. He had an okay Senior Bowl. You wanted to see a little more from him. He just didn't get it there, so this is another opportunity for him to go out there while some of these players aren't going to throw. I get it on some level, but for Carson Strong, this is something that he has to do to continue to prove his draft stock. And, there's no downside to him working out here, Tommy.
All right, we've asked for Jamey Eisenberg's sort of wish list for guys that he's looking out for, maybe some dynasty diamonds, of course. Heavily loaded from the running back position. We'll talk about Treylon Burks as well, Jamey, but what about the running backs that you're anticipating to see this week?
Yeah, Breece Hall from Iowa State is my favorite. You look at what he did as a Cyclone. The rushing numbers there, average nearly 6 yards per carry. Did a great job catching the ball as well. 82 catches, 6 touchdowns out of the backfield. So he's got the ability to be a 3-down threat. A guy that can do it all. Landing spot is clearly going to matter for a lot of these guys when we talk about their fantasy options and where their stock will lie. But Isaiah Spiller just got an absolute stud. Again, a guy that can catch the ball in the backfield. 74 catches there at Texas A&M. The one that's the most intriguing to me, though, is Kenneth Walker, because he does not catch the ball. At least he did not at Michigan State. But he could be a guy that has a similar impact. Think about Elijah Mitchell with the 49ers. Not a big pass catcher. Ended up in a great situation because we know how the 49ers run the ball. So, again, when we talk fantasy and where these guys are going to end up, it's going to be about fit and obviously what their opportunity is. But there's so much to like about these guys. There's not a Najee Harris in this class. There's not a guy that stands out above the rest. I don't know if you've mocked a guy in the first round or not, but I don't think we're going to see that. That's the thing that's a little bit different. So where these guys go, day 2, day 3, will certainly matter. But these 3 guys are the ones I'm the most intrigued about from a running back perspective.
And Ryan, what tends to be the differential between a cluster of guys like that? Is it just sort of team philosophy, fit from a evaluator perspective? What tends to be maybe if guys are thought of to be in the same group that may be picked earlier than others?
I think exactly what you're hitting on, because Jamey just mentioned Najee Harris. He went at the bottom of round 1 last year. Huge need for the Steelers, sort of that bruising type back. That's why he went there. The year before, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was sort of a surprise when he went at the end of the first round to Kansas City, because Andy Reid had never drafted a running back that high. So I think you're exactly hitting on the points. It just goes, it varies team by team and GM by GM and what they want to do there. And the only other thing I'll mention is that this group, Jamey, feels a lot like the group from 2 years ago that started with Jonathan Taylor in the second round. Obviously, Clyde Edwards-Helaire went late first, but that cluster of guys, the Cam Akers, the J.K. Dobbins, and I think that could be the same. Yeah, exactly. This could be this group here that you have a run in the second round. And one other name I'll mention, shout out to BMAC here, Deshaun Corbin out of Florida State. He is fantastic. I didn't get a chance to watch him until this week. Had a great season at Florida State. They had a tough year, of course, but I think he's a guy to also keep an eye on.
If you're going to bring up you got to bring up Dameon Pierce. If you're going to bring up a Florida State guy,
you're right.
I'm a Florida guy. You got to talk about Dameon Pierce, who was great at the Senior Bowl.
Exactly. You're right.
A guy who turned some heads there.
And let's finish up with Burks, the wide receiver conversation, perhaps top receiver. Jamey, I'll have you start, then Ryan follow here.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, this is the position, I think, fantasy-wise, where I think a lot of people are going to gravitate. And obviously, talent-wise, I think a lot of NFL evaluators are looking at as well, because you talk about a situation where Jamar Chase changes the conversation. When Justin Jefferson changes the conversation, when you see what these guys are coming in and doing right away as rookies. Now, I don't know if Burks is going to necessarily do that, but again, a guy that averaged nearly 17 yards per catch, a guy with 18 touchdowns in his college career. And so this is a loaded class at the wide receiver spot. This is where fantasy managers are going to gravitate. You got the 2 guys from Ohio State. I know our guy Brian Tully's going to like to hear that. When you have Wilson and Olave, you got London out of USC. It's a very good wide receiver group at the top, and then we'll see just how these guys sort of trickle down through the rest of the draft. But Treylon Burks is somebody that I'm in love with, and I think you're going to see him as the first overall selection in rookie drafts going into 2022.
Jamey, I think you're right. Number one, he may go first, the fantasy implications, but he may go first overall among all the wide receivers as well. And you can see here.
Fair or foul there, by the way. Fair or foul, the DK Metcalf comparison, Ryan. What do you think?
Well, here's the thing. I think it's fair. He's not going to run a 4.33. I don't think Treylon will, but his 3-cone will be much better than the 4.38 or the 7.38, excuse me, that sort of torpedo DK Metcalf to the end. And here's the first-round wide receivers I have in my latest mock draft here. Treylon Burks, like I was saying, Jamey, could end up being the first wide receiver taken. He is so explosive, so athletic. He's much more versatile than DK was coming out of Ole Miss. Garrett Wilson reminds me of Odell Beckham in a lot of ways. Drake London, I was talking to a scout who compared him to a bigger version of Devontae Adams, so that gets your attention. And Jameson Williams is interesting because he tore his ACL in the national title game, and I talked to 3 teams that didn't care. They're like, he's still a first-round pick. If he had stayed healthy, I think he may be in the conversation to battle Treylon Burks and Garrett Wilson as the first wide receiver.
All right, we're talking a lot of offense, but of course we have the defense on hand later this week. Later today, we have head coaching interviews with Bruce Arians, Arthur Smith, and Doug Peterson all lined up for you guys today. Again, quiet now, but it's going to be busy in just a bit. For Jamey Eisenberg, Ryan Wilson, I'm Tommy Tran. We'll send it back to Fort Lauderdale and Jeremy St. Louis.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.